let's take a look at how to add and subtract mixed numbers. A gardener fertilizes his garden with bags of mulch. For his tomatoes, he used 4 2/7 bags of mulch. For his flowers, he used 7.5 bags of mulch. How many bags of mulch did the gardener use in total? Okay, well, since they're saying in total, that's a hint that we need to add these two numbers together. So we need to say 4 2/7 plus 7.5 to figure out the total amount of bags of fertilizer used. Okay, now if I look at these two numbers, they're both mixed numbers, meaning they have a whole number part and a fraction part that goes with it. So what I want to do is I want to rewrite these numbers as improper fractions, and then I'm going to go from there. So to rewrite these as improper fractions, I can multiply the whole number by the denominator and add the numerator and put it over the denominator. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is 4 as a whole number, right? If I were to say 4 times 7, that would give me 28. So another way I could write 4 as a whole number would be 28 over 7. And then we still have another 2 out of 7, right? Which would give me altogether 30 out of 7. So you can do that and kind of take your time with it. Or, like I said before, if you take the whole number times the denominator or bottom, 4 times 7 would give us 28, add the top, plus the 2 would give us 30, and then that gives us our mixed number, 30 over 7. Okay, let's do the same thing with 7.5. Well, 7 times 2 is 14, right? So 7 we could think of as being 14 over 2, and then we still have to add that 1 for 1/2. So this would become 15 over 2. So again, you multiply 7 times 2 is 14, add the 1 to get 15, and then you always keep the same denominator. All right, so now that I have improper fractions, I'm adding 30 over 7 plus 15 over 2. Now the rule is anytime I'm adding fractions, I need to have a common denominator. Okay, now denominator is the bottom of the fraction. Common means they need to be the same. So a common denominator means I need to change these two numbers so they have the same bottom part of the fraction. Okay, so to do that, I want to find the smallest number that 7 and 2 both go into. Well, 7 and 2 both go into 14. Okay, another way to do that is to think of your least common multiple, right? 7 times 2 gives me 14. There's nothing smaller than that 17 and 2 both go into. So I want to write both of these with a denominator of 14. Okay, and then when you're converting from 30 over 7 to that same fraction, putting it over 14, whatever you did to the denominator, you have to do the same thing to the numerator. So in the denominator or in the bottom, well, if I had a 7 and I made it a 14, I multiplied that by 2, right? 2 times 7 would give me 14. So if I multiplied the bottom of that fraction by 2, I have to do the same thing on the top. So 30 times 2 would give me 60. Okay, so that means 60 over 14 is another way to write 30 over 7 that has the same value, right? I just doubled both numbers. Now I'm going to do that same process for 15 over 2. Notice in the denominator, I went from 2 to 14. So I multiplied my 2 by 7, right? 2 times 7 would give me 14. So if I multiplied the denominator or the bottom number by 7, I have to do the exact same thing and multiply the numerator or the top number by 7. So 15 times 7 is 105. Okay, so now I have 60 over 14 plus 105 over 14. Now the rule is when you're adding, you add the numbers on the top, and once the denominator is the same, you can essentially write that as one fraction, right? The whole thing over 14. Okay, well on the top, 60 plus 105 gives me 165. So these two things add up to 165 over 14. Okay, now notice it said simplify your answer and write it as a proper fraction or a mixed number. Right now, this is an improper fraction. Okay, an improper fraction means the number on the top, or numerator, is bigger than the number on the bottom. So I can take this and turn this into a mixed number because I don't think 14 is going to go evenly into 165, so I don't think it's going to give me a whole number answer. Okay, well, one thing you can do as a hint if you're not sure is you can divide it. If you take your calculator and you divide 165 divided by 14, it gives me 11.7. So it means it goes in 11 whole times and then a fraction more. So I know the whole number part is going to be 11. Okay, so what I want to do is say, well, what did that give me? So 14 times 11 is 154. Okay, so that means that accounts for 154 of the 165. So to see how many are left for the proper fraction part of my mixed number, I want to subtract and say, okay, 165 minus 154, what does that leave me with? And that leaves me with 11. Okay, so that means I have another 11 out of the 14. So as a mixed number, my answer is 11 and 11/14. Nathan writes in his journal for 2 7/8 of an hour on Saturday and 3 5/8 of an hour on Sunday. How many hours did Nathan spend writing in his journal over the weekend? Okay, well, since he wrote for some hours on Saturday and more hours on Sunday, to find the total, we're going to add those together. Okay, so we want to add 2 7/8 plus 3 5/8. Okay, now there's a few different ways to go about this. I think the easiest way is to turn our mixed numbers into improper fractions first. So remember we said to turn them into improper fractions, we can multiply the whole number by the bottom or the denominator, and then add the numerator and just keep the same denominator. Okay, so 2 times 8 gives me 16, and then I'm going to add the top. So 16 plus 7 gives me 23. So I could write this as 23, and of course the denominator stays the same over 8. And I'm going to do the same thing for my other fraction. I'm going to turn this mixed number, 3 5/8, into an improper fraction. So 3 times 8 gives me 24, plus the 5 on the top gives me 29. So that's the same thing as saying 29 out of 8. Now, to add fractions, I need a common denominator. But if I look at these, they already have a common denominator, right? They both have a common or same denominator or bottom number of 8. So that means I can simply add the numbers on the top and put my answer over that denominator of 8. Okay, so let's add 23 plus 29, and that gives me 52. All right, so I don't think 52 is going to divide evenly by 8, so I'm going to write my answer as a mixed number. So to do that, I want to think, well, how many times does 8 go into 52? Well, I think it's going to go in 6 times because 8 times 6 is 48. Okay, and that's just a little bit smaller than my 52. So if 8 times 6, and I'm going to write this out here so you can see what I'm thinking. If 8 times 6 is 48, that means I've already accounted for 48 of that 52. To see what's left for my proper fraction part of the mixed number, I'm going to subtract. Well, it was a 52 on top. I'm going to subtract out the 48 that's accounted for in my whole number part, And that means 52 minus 48 leaves me with 4. So I have 6 and 4 left out of 8. Okay, and I can take this even one step further because 4 over 8 I can simplify. So I'm going to leave my whole number part as 6. And then 4 goes into both 4 and 8. 4 goes into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 8 twice. So as a mixed number, I can say it's 6 1/2.